Hey everybody, this is James from TeaDB bringing you an Inbetweenisode. So this is a drinking Inbetweenisode. I'm going to be pounding out 3 different teas. I guess they're different and the same. So I will be drinking 3 different versions of the Xiaguan Gold Ribbon tool. This is a Xiaguan special production. It comes in a yellowish gold box, and the tool has a gold ribbon in it. So I was turned on to this tea from my buddy Toby a few years back. So thank you, Toby. Shout outs to you. I got all 3 of these from the same vendor, MXT. Doesn't necessarily guarantee the same storage, but it's, somewhat similar storage. I think it's South China, kind of in that Pearl River Delta range. So the initial production of this tea was 2004. So I will be bringing that tea on. I'll be drinking that tea last. I have the September one, so it's not the absolute first, but it's towards the beginning. And the 2006 and 2007 were the subsequent productions of it. So it's the first 3 productions of this tea. And these factory teas, this is one that I do drink now and then. And they occupy this sort of niche of the occasional daily drink. That's pretty strong, good caffeine boost, maybe doesn't last quite as long as something more boutique. But it's also a tea where it's really easy to see how they will improve and age because they're just so strong. And so you can see sort of how that feel of the astringency of the bitterness, and if it smooths out over time, it'll get nicer. And the question sort of becomes, how long will that take? So I got these all from MXT. Right now, I believe they are only selling the 2004 on their site. They tend to rotate the stock. So a few months ago, only the 2007 was on there. And I have bought the 2006 before. I haven't seen it for a while. I would not be surprised if any of these come back. So they sell for, respectively, the 2004 version sells for around $25. The 2006 sold for, I think, around 10, maybe slightly less. The 2007 sells for 5, and those are all for 100-gram tools. So I own 1 of the 2004 and 2007s, and I bought 10 of the 2006 ones maybe about a year ago when they were on sale. So going to be sort of comparing how similar and different they are. This was not a side-by-side comparison because these teas are strong. I did not want to destroy myself in one day, so I drank them on subsequent days and filmed myself. So if you are curious about these teas, if you are curious about factory teas, about a well above average Xiaguan production, I think this will be a good episode for you. Being the 2007 Gold Ribbon, this is the first tea that we're drinking. I just had 1 infusion off camera. I have steep number 2 right here, and I'm going to make steep number 3 right now, just to show you that this kettle has some steam coming out of it. And we are using 6.1 grams for 95 milliliters. Alright, steep number 3. Pretty much just giving this close to a flash steep here. And yeah, we're going to take a quick smell and then we're going to drink it. So again, all these teas seem like they've had something along the lines of Guangzhou storage, brewing up orangish red. On the first couple infusions and the rinse, this tea had a really kind of burly, woody smokiness to it, kind of like a barbecue, but it sort of has a lot of sweetness also coupled with that, so it's not like paired with like a heavy bitterness. So it's strong, but it's like in a way that's somewhat palatable, depending on what you like. If you're someone that really doesn't want to taste those smoky flavors in tea, it's probably not a great one for you, but it's the sort of smokiness that if I were to choose a sort of smokiness, I would definitely choose this type of smokiness. Still has some of that. It is a Xiaguan barbecue over here. Yeah, I'll be curious to compare these other teas in the next couple of days because this one is by far the smokiest in my memory. Again, I'm having this often at first, so I can't say for sure. Brewing pretty dark here, so cheers, guys. Okay, so it's definitely pretty punchy. That first steep I had was not quite as strong. This one has a strong streak of astringency as well. It's sort of like puckering, drying my mouth out just a little bit. One of my friends, my tea friends, does like this tea more than the other two. I think he likes it because it is strong. So if you're someone that really likes the raw pu'er strong, this is a pretty good tea for that. But if you prefer it a little more mellow, as I tend to do, I think the later ones will probably be better, but we'll see. We'll see. There's maybe a hint of menthol, menthol camphor. I'm not getting it too heavy though. Pininess, still quite aromatic, so sort of like a piney, sappy saccharin, quite aromatic overall. Steep number 3, guys. So brewing an orangish red. And one thing that I think is quite obvious is it's easy to see how these sorts of teas improve. That really strong drying streak of astringency. I mean, it's strong, and you would hope that would mellow out for time unless you are someone that's particularly attracted to those things. And so I think the concern is less like, will this age well, and more, will this age okay in a Western environment? And that's a question for this tea in particular, because like it certainly has room to mellow out, and the West is going to be dry, and I think these teas are not necessarily created with keeping a place like Seattle or the U.S., most of the U.S., which is air conditioned and not, doesn't get quite to the extremes of South China or Hong Kong or Taiwan. So yeah, here's infusion number 3. Woo, that's even stronger. It's almost got like this herbal bitterness to it. Maybe small hints of Chinese medicine. Yeah, for me this is a tea that is hold. It's this would never be a daily drinker in my household, and I enjoy aspects of this tea, but I think and I can see the potential there, but it's not something I would drink very often. So in terms of rating, I'm going to give it a... it's hard because the scale sort of puts stuff into categories. So I'd say this would maybe be a 5.2, which technically puts it into this indifferent. This is a tea that exists, nothing impressive or off-putting. I wouldn't say that's quite right, actually, for this tea. More that this tea is just a little bit too strong, too powerful for me to enjoy fully. Maybe it's one that I should, you know, take a little bit off of my parameters, but realistically for me it probably just means I'm going to set it aside for a few years. Only have one of these tools, and they're cheapish, so not something that I'm overly concerned with, and I would say it definitely has the potential to get a rating that is considerably higher, 6 point something, sometime down the line if it does indeed mellow out and improve. So definitely some attributes that do stand out, but the bite back that this tea has is a bit strong. Yep, that's quite bitter, quite astringent. So we're getting into probably what are the strongest infusions here. So you guys saw how long I steeped that tea. It was not for very long. So a strong tea that also is aged, to be clear. This does not taste like a young tea, but still has, I think, a pretty long way to go as far as becoming drinkable. Here we are drinking the 2006. So today I have, or for this one, I have steeps 3 and number 4, and you can see my kettle is boiling away right here as well. So may go ahead and make another one. And I think notably this tea is obviously not nearly as smoky. It had a little bit of retired smoke on the first infusion, so hints of it, but not nearly as much as the 2007. The tea is still quite aromatic. And it has some similarities for sure. It has this sort of like thick, syrupy, sappy, woody pineness to it, to the aroma, but it's not nearly as intense. So I'm going to finish off steep 3 right here. Does not taste too dissimilar from the aroma. It's a little bitter, but not overly so, and not nearly as astringent as the other tea. There's maybe a little bit of drying, but it's not nearly at the level of the tea yesterday. So after I finished filming, I actually did not finish the tea. So I only had a few infusions of the 2007 just because it was so strong and I did not want to get over caffeinated. But this tea, I do think I will actually probably be drinking at least a few more infusions of, because I just enjoy it a little bit more. So here's the 5th infusion. Might let this go for 5 or 10 seconds. Yeah, so brews up a similar orangish red color as the other tea. Not as drying, for sure. And these factory teas, they do tend to fall off fast, so I would expect that this could go, 8 to 10 maybe, especially if you're pushing those last few. So just declogging here and sort of getting this orangish red color, pretty consistent with what I've gotten out of the session so far. Aroma dying just down a little bit, still some aroma to it. And I like the basic profile of this aroma. This one falls a little bit into that menthol category as well, so that's a sort of category I do enjoy. And it's pungent still, but not too pungent. This one's a little astringent. I'm getting hints of sort of like these sort of drier fruits, especially in the aroma when I'm drinking this. This one is a little bit more astringent than the last one. I'd say if we were to say the 2007, the infusions I had there were like a 7 or 8 in terms of like astringent / drying scale. I'd say this is like, even at its most, it's at a 3 or 4. So maybe half as astringent and as bitey as that tea is. Again, it still has some room to improve. And we'll pay attention to how the aftertaste is. So this steep looks a little bit darker in the cup than my last one. So I'll be curious to see if I overbrewed this, which I think, looking at it, sorry, I got the poo burps, is definitely a distinct possibility. But here, let's give it a try. Yes, I think I did overbrew it just a little bit, using basically the same parameters as yesterday. Probably should have leaned a little bit closer to a flash deep there. But I still don't think it's quite as astringent as the tea yesterday. And, it's hard to say if the 1 year is really the difference maker. I tend to lean no, just because I don't think 13 years versus 12 years is that big of a difference. So I think these batches may have had different storage to some extent, and or the recipe could have been just a little bit different. So 2007 from MXT definitely still has more of those burly, smoky elements to it. They both brew, interestingly, sort of this similar orangish red. So now we will be moving on to the 2004. But before that, I'm going to give this a rating. I am going to rate it a 5.9. So in the Marco scale, this would put it as enjoyable. Could drink regularly, but not impressive. I think this tea, similar to the 2007, has significant upside to it. It's easy to see how something like this would age. So I think I'm not even willing to say that the 2007 has worse material than this tea, just that it is stronger and way more pungent right now. So this is on the brink of something that I can drink, and in fact I have finished off about 60 grams of a 100-gram tool in the past year. So it is something I have drank like 8 or 9 times in the past year, so that's pretty good, honestly, overall. But it's also a tea that I think will probably just continue to improve, assuming it does not dry out. I'm drinking the 2004 Gold Ribbon the day after. We have steeps number 3 and 4 right here, as well as a kettle that is boiling away for steep number 5. So going to take a quick sniff here. I'd say that overall the aroma is a little sweeter, almost creamy a little bit, not quite as like green, pungent hay, or as Denny likes to describe it, gasoline, as some of the other ones. I'd say it did smell a little bit of that retired smoke, maybe a little similar to the 2006 earlier on. So inaugural year for this tea, not the inaugural production, this one's the September one, and those dates can make quite a big difference, but we're going to go ahead and drink here. So sort of this thick menthol wood, probably even heavier on the wood elements. There's a little bit of bitterness there for sure. I'd say it's overall a little softer than the other two. I think it may have had slightly wetter storage. I think it's important to note also that you can't necessarily guarantee that these teas were stored exactly the same way. MXT, I forget when it came to exist, but I'm pretty sure it was after this tea was created. So it's not a safe assumption. They do tend to source teas that have been stored somewhat similarly, but stored similarly is not the same as stored the same. Alright, so here is steep number 4, and for the sake of comparison, we will do steep number 5, and we'll let this go for a little longer, as we did for the 2006. It's almost like a slight anesthetic thing going on to this tea as well. And I would say the 2004 and the 2006 have, a somewhat similar profile. 2007 comes across as just much more pungent and smoky and strong, and for me, not quite ready to drink. The 2004, 2006 I can definitely enjoy. And both of them still continue to have room to sort of smooth out. I'd say this tea is getting closer. I don't know when would be the peak time for me to enjoy this, but this is something that I could definitely drink regularly, and so I do have just the one tool of this. So, sweeter, almost like, yeah, it's really quite a sweet smell. I don't know, it's not quite fruit, it's more like sweet candied wood is how I would describe it. So pretty up my alley, actually. So I definitely say this tea, I notice it creeping back a little further back in the mouth, so I think the depth's a little bit better to the tea. Another thing to point out with these productions is that, sometimes they do use aged material here, so it's quite possible that this is using material from, I don't know, the earlier 2000s, so the actual biological age of the tea might come out to be a little older than 15 years, or what I would be drinking now. Some medicinal qualities to it too. And I would also say this is definitely not the same as a wet stored, traditionally stored tea. While there's certainly elements that have advanced it biologically, I'd say it overall comes across as certainly clean enough for myself. Okay, so this one's quite hot, so we will be slurping loudly. Okay, so again, stress testing this. It's kind of the same tea, but it does get a little more astringent, a little more drying on the mouth, a little more bitter. So it's definitely giving it the stress test, which, as you can tell, is not super long. It has some room to grow. So going to give this tea a rating of a 6.1, which kind of falls into a similar category as the 2006 one. It's something enjoyable. I could drink it regularly. It's not the most impressive tea. I think something like the Xiaguan Love Forever Paper Tong is probably a better tea that I enjoy a little more now. I think this tea as well as that tea have considerable upside. The 2007 might have the most upside, and just because it is like the most astringent of the teas. But this is really quite tasty. We're going to have some takeaways, some concluding thoughts here. So I'd say that these teas come across, having them in subsequent days, as fairly similar. I think the 2004 is probably the best material. It has better depth. It's a lot smoother right now. Definitely the best one to drink right now. I think the issue with it is that $25 is a lot more than the alternatives. That being said, $25 is not a crazy amount to spend for a tea, and is right around the average price of your average young sheng pu'er these days. So I think it's a pretty reasonable price to pay for something you just want to drink. So so I think in terms of value, the 2006 and 2007 are probably better. The 2007 is probably the best value buy just because it's cheaper. It's pungent. It's really, really pungent. So much so that I would not want to drink it right now. And it's smoky. It's strong. I can't say that there would be a huge... I can't say that I measured a huge difference in just the sheer quality of the material. I think the 2004 is the best. But is it 5 times as good as the 2007? Probably not. Yeah, so I think sort of the 2006 sort of is the happy middle where it sort of splits the difference between them. I don't think it's quite as good as the 2004, but it's also not quite at that price. But it's also drinkable. I would say the 2004 and the 2006 for me are at a status where I could drink them now and then, and that's effectively what I do. Whereas in 2007, I'm not going to be touching that for a few years for sure. So yeah, I think that just about concludes this Inbetweenisode, where you get 3 teas for in the video of 1, whatever that means. So thank you for tuning in. Let me know how you like this Inbetweenisode. Check out MXT. I'll include the link for that vendor. Really easy to identify this tea. It's just got a really distinctive gold box for it. So yeah, check it out. I think there are some later productions, but considering how strong the 2007 was, I doubt I will be checking those out. So if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you're interested in seeing more content from myself and Denny, and I will see you all next time. Cheers.